Welcome back to the Rock Vault, where the amps are always hot. Today, we're rewinding to the 1960s, when rock was raw, restless, and rewriting the rules of youth culture. From soulful ballads to electrifying anthems, these weren't just songs. They were life soundtracks. Join us as we revisit the era's best rock gems, still echoing through our memories and stereos alike.
People try to put us down.
Few songs scream the spirit of rebellion quite like My Generation. From the opening bass stutter to Roger Daltrey's defiant growl, this anthem was a shot across the bow of polite society. Pete Townshend's razor-sharp chords cut like electricity, while Keith Moon's chaotic drumming nearly explodes out of the speakers. It wasn't just a song. It was a manifesto for a youth that refused to be silenced. The Who captured something raw and untamed. Released in 1965, Britain was still shaking off the dust of post-war conservatism. And suddenly here came this blast of noise that snarled in the face of conformity. The famous line, "I hope I die before I get old," became both a battle cry and a generational creed. For teenagers with denim jackets and restless hearts, it felt like someone had finally given them a voice. Chart success came quickly, cracking the top 10 in the UK and making waves across the Atlantic. But its true impact wasn't about numbers. It was about the way radios, garages, and dance halls across the world suddenly shook with a new kind of electricity. The distorted feedback and stuttering vocal delivery weren't mistakes. They were statements. They turned imperfection into rebellion, setting the stage for punk, hard rock, and everything raw that followed. For many, the memory of hearing My Generation for the first time is unforgettable. Picture yourself in '65. The glow of a lava lamp on the dresser. Your record player spinning under the posters of your favorite bands. When that bass riff kicked in, you didn't just listen. You felt like you belonged to something bigger, something unstoppable. It was more than music. It was identity.
Don't you all fade away.
Even today, nearly 6 decades later, the song still feels urgent, a reminder of when rock was a dangerous, unpredictable force capable of shaking the world awake. My Generation isn't frozen in time. It lives every time a new crowd of restless kids discovers it and shouts along. And that's the beauty of rock. It never grows old, even when we do.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
If the 1960s had an anthem for solitude and reflection, it was The Sound of Silence. Haunting in its delivery and poetic in its message, Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel created a folk rock masterpiece that spoke to a generation searching for meaning in a rapidly changing world. Unlike the thunderous rebellion of louder rock acts, this song struck with quiet power, a whisper that carried like a roar.
To talk with you again because of vision.
The track began humbly, recorded acoustically in 1964, but it didn't truly take off until producer Tom Wilson overdubbed electric guitars and drums the following year, transforming it into a folk rock landmark. That fusion, delicate harmonies meeting the edge of electric instrumentation, captured the transitional moment of the mid-60s, when traditional folk was colliding with the raw surge of rock. Its success was undeniable, topping the Billboard Hot 100 in early 1966 and cementing Simon and Garfunkel as voices of a restless era.
Softly creeping, left its seeds while I was.
But beyond the charts, its resonance came from the imagery woven into the lyrics. Lines about neon gods and words unspoken felt like reflections of a society grappling with disconnection in an age of upheaval. It wasn't just music, it was poetry set against the pulse of rock. For anyone who heard it late at night on FM radio, the song felt like a companion in the dark, echoing your own private thoughts back at you.
Sleeping and the vision.
Imagine being a college student in 1966, sitting in a dorm room with posters of Dylan and the Beatles taped to the walls, spinning this track on vinyl. The hush of Garfunkel's voice, the ache in Simon's words, and the subtle electric undertones felt like more than a song. They felt like a truth you'd always known but couldn't quite articulate. It was introspection for a generation raised on optimism but staring down uncertainty.
That was planted in my brain, still reading.
Decades later, the song remains timeless, not because it shouts, but because it listens. It reminds us that even in the noise of modern life, silence has a voice, and sometimes it says more than any amplifier ever could. If the Beatles embodied youthful charm, the Rolling Stones were the wild cousins who brought grit and danger to rock's family tree, and no song captured that raw defiance better than I Can't Get No Satisfaction. With Keith Richards' fuzz-drenched riff firing like a siren, Mick Jagger's sneer poured gasoline over the flames of mid-60s discontent. The track didn't just climb the charts. It announced a new swaggering identity for rock and roll. The story of that famous riff is now legend. Richards claimed he dreamt it, woke up, recorded a rough version on a cassette, and went back to sleep. That hazy, half-conscious spark became one of the most recognizable openings in rock history. Layered with Jack Nitzsche's piano and the Stones' driving rhythm section, the song broke away from the polished pop conventions dominating the airwaves. This was something dirtier, grittier, and entirely unapologetic. Released in the summer of 1965, Satisfaction captured a cultural moment where youth was restless and advertising, consumerism, and authority felt suffocating. Jagger's lyrics, biting, sarcastic, endlessly frustrated, voiced the dissatisfaction of a generation who didn't want the world their parents built. That honesty, delivered with a sneer, turned the song into both a protest and a liberation. It stormed to #1 in the US and the UK, instantly making the Stones international stars. The nostalgic memory of Satisfaction isn't just about its riff. It's about how it felt. Picture a 1965 teenager with a brand new transistor radio tucked under their pillow, volume low so their parents wouldn't hear. That riff crackles through the tiny speaker, followed by Jagger's drawl, and suddenly the room feels electric, alive with possibility. This was more than a song. It was a rite of passage into rebellion. The track also helped solidify the Stones' image as the dangerous alternative to the Beatles' clean-cut appeal. They weren't here to soothe. They were here to provoke, to stir restlessness, to make you feel the heat of youth's impatience. For many fans, blasting this song from their car speakers was the first taste of real freedom, an anthem for long drives with the windows rolled down and the night stretching endlessly ahead. Decades later, the riff remains immortal. It has been imitated, sampled, and covered, but it never loses its bite. Satisfaction is rock stripped down to its essence, loud, raw, frustrated, and unforgettable. It's proof that sometimes the simplest riff can spark a revolution, and once that fire starts, it never goes out.
It's been a hard day's night.
When the Summer of Love needed its anthem, the Beatles delivered one with universal simplicity and timeless resonance. All You Need Is Love wasn't just a song. It was a declaration broadcast to the world, premiering during the first ever global television satellite broadcast, watched by over 400 million people. This track turned rock into a unifying language of peace and possibility. Musically, it was both playful and profound. John Lennon's lyrics were direct, almost childlike, yet carried the weight of generations yearning for something more than war and division. The orchestration blended rock's driving pulse with brass, strings, and chorale flourishes, proving that pop music could be sophisticated without losing its soul. George Martin's production gave it a grandeur that felt cinematic, wrapping Lennon's voice in a soundscape that invited everyone to sing along. Released in July 1967, the single soared to #1 in the UK and the US. But its legacy went far beyond charts. It became the soundtrack of a cultural turning point, when music, fashion, and politics converged in the belief that love could be a revolution. For many, it was the perfect expression of the idealism that defined the late 60s. The nostalgic pull of this song is undeniable. Imagine being in a crowded park that summer, barefoot in the grass, the scent of patchouli and incense in the air, as everyone sang the chorus together like a hymn. Or recall the way it sounded on a scratchy car radio. Windows rolled down as young couples drove into the night, convinced the world was truly changing. The song didn't just soundtrack a moment, it was the moment. Even today, All You Need Is Love retains its magic. It might sound idealistic, even naive, but its message endures because it captures a truth people never stop hoping for. In the swirl of modern chaos, its chorus still cuts through with the same clarity as it did in '67. Simple, universal, and impossible to forget. Where you go with that gun in your head? Few songs announced a revolution as boldly as Purple Haze. From its first warped guitar note, it was clear Jimi Hendrix wasn't just another guitarist. He was rewriting what the electric guitar could be. Released in 1967, this psychedelic firestorm became a defining anthem of the counterculture, merging blues roots with sonic experimentation that felt like it had been beamed in from another planet. The sound of Purple Haze was nothing short of explosive. Hendrix wielded his guitar like a weapon and a paintbrush all at once, bending strings, feeding back, and diving into distortion in ways no one had ever dared on a mainstream single. Mitch Mitchell's thundering drums and Noel Redding's pulsing bass grounded the chaos, but Hendrix was the storm itself. His riffs weren't just catchy, they were otherworldly, a doorway into the psychedelic frontier. Behind its surreal lyrics and cosmic imagery lay a perfect symbol of 1967's spirit: exploration, liberation, and a refusal to play by the old rules. Released just as the summer of love was igniting, the song captured the sound of minds expanding, of boundaries dissolving. It didn't climb the charts by accident. It became a lightning rod for every kid who wanted music to take them somewhere they'd never been before. The nostalgic pull of Purple Haze is undeniable. Picture yourself in a smoky club in '67. The scent of incense in the air, lights swirling overhead as Hendrix takes the stage. The opening riff roars through the amplifiers, and suddenly you're lifted into another dimension. Or imagine hearing it for the first time on a late-night FM station, the sound crackling through your speakers as if it were broadcasting straight from the cosmos. The song also cemented Hendrix's status as a cultural icon. He wasn't just a guitarist, he was a force of nature who embodied the possibilities of rock music. For young listeners, Hendrix represented freedom. Freedom to push limits, to break molds, to turn raw noise into something transcendent. For veterans of the '60s, it still recalls that dizzying sense of discovery, when every note felt like the future unfolding in real time. Decades later, Purple Haze hasn't lost its magic. Its riffs remain a rite of passage for guitarists. Its energy still electrifies every room it's played in. Hendrix may have left us too soon, but this song ensures his spirit lives forever, as raw, untamed, and revolutionary as the day it first lit the sky.
You know that it would be untrue. You know that
When Light My Fire burst onto the airwaves in 1967, it was like nothing else on radio. The Doors combined a hypnotic organ riff, Jim Morrison's smoldering baritone, and a jazzy rhythm section to create a track that was equal parts dangerous, sensual, and electrifying. It didn't just flirt with boundaries, it set them ablaze, capturing the hedonistic spirit of the late 60s.
be a lie if I was to say to you.
Musically, the song stood out immediately. Ray Manzarek's swirling Vox Continental organ intro was unforgettable, locking listeners into a trance before Morrison's voice swept in, equal parts poetry and seduction. Robbie Krieger's guitar work and John Densmore's drumming added jazz-inspired flair, making the track feel both primal and sophisticated. At over 7 minutes long in its original form, it broke the rules of radio singles, yet audiences couldn't get enough.
Girl, we couldn't get much higher.
Released on their debut album and trimmed down for radio, Light My Fire shot to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, firmly establishing the Doors as one of rock's most daring new acts. It wasn't just about commercial success. It was about how this song gave voice to a generation embracing freedom, rebellion, and experimentation in every sense of the word. Morrison's delivery dripped with urgency, turning the idea of romance into something wild and untamed. The nostalgic memories tied to this song run deep. Imagine being in a smoky club in Los Angeles in 1967, the heat of the crowd pressing in, as Morrison prowled the stage like a shaman, daring the audience to step into the fire with him. Or picture cruising down the highway with your windows down, the song blasting from an AM radio, the extended instrumental break carrying you further and further into a dreamlike haze. Light My Fire also pushed boundaries in ways that echoed beyond music. Its performance on The Ed Sullivan Show became infamous when Morrison refused to censor the lyric, "Girl, we couldn't get much higher." That moment alone crystallized the rebellious identity of the Doors, a refusal to bend even in front of millions of viewers. Decades later, the song hasn't dimmed. It's still a slow burn that builds into a wildfire, reminding us of a time when rock dared to be strange, daring, and unapologetically free. With just one song, the Doors didn't just open a door. They kicked it wide open and invited us into a world of fire and shadow. From its very first chord, that ringing, clanging sound that musicologists still debate to this day, A Hard Day's Night captured the world's attention. Released in 1964 at the height of Beatlemania, the song was pure exhilaration pressed into vinyl, with its irresistible energy, witty lyrics, and harmonies that made listeners feel like they were part of the frenzy. If any song summed up the British invasion's joyous takeover, this was it. Musically, it was as clever as it was catchy. John Lennon's lead vocals carried urgency, while Paul McCartney's soaring high notes on the bridge gave it contrast and balance. George Harrison's jangly 12-string Rickenbacker added a bright shimmer that would influence countless bands to come, while Ringo Starr's steady backbeat grounded the chaos with charm. The song's structure was simple, yet its execution was sophisticated, showing how the Beatles could transform pop into rock brilliance. It wasn't just a hit single. It was the centerpiece of their first feature film, A Hard Day's Night, which turned Beatlemania into a cinematic experience. The movie's opening sequence, set to this track, perfectly captured the whirlwind energy of the era. Fans screaming, the band running, the music blasting like the pulse of a new generation. The song soared to #1 on both the UK and US charts, solidifying the Beatles' dominance not just in music, but in culture itself. For many, the nostalgic memory of A Hard Day's Night is tied to youth itself. Picture being a teenager in 1964, huddled around the family television watching the film premiere, or spinning the 45 on a turntable while practicing the lyrics with friends. The laughter, the excitement, the feeling that something entirely new was happening. That was the magic of this song. It was more than entertainment. It was history unfolding in real time. Even today, A Hard Day's Night feels fresh, bursting with the same vitality it had when it first hit radios. That legendary opening chord still jolts you awake, like the world's most joyful alarm clock. The song is a reminder of when rock music was not only about sound, but about movement. A movement that spread across oceans, connecting millions through a shared sense of wonder. Decades later, whenever that first chord rings out, it still feels like the beginning of something extraordinary. It's not just a song, it's the spark of Beatlemania, the sound of the 60s igniting, and proof that sometimes 3 minutes of music can change the world forever. When Sunshine of Your Love hit the airwaves in 1967, it was like a thunderclap announcing the arrival of a new kind of rock, heavier, darker, and full of raw power. Cream, with Eric Clapton on guitar, Jack Bruce on bass and vocals, and Ginger Baker on drums, fused blues grit with psychedelic experimentation to create one of the most iconic riffs of all time. The song's opening lick is legendary, simple, hypnotic, and unforgettable. It's the kind of riff that feels eternal, as though it had always existed, just waiting for Clapton and Bruce to discover it. Add in Clapton's searing guitar tone, Bruce's soulful delivery, and Baker's thunderous jazz-infused drumming, and you had a track that practically defined hard rock before the term even existed. Released on the groundbreaking album Disraeli Gears, Sunshine of Your Love became Cream's biggest US hit, climbing to #5 on the Billboard Hot 100. But more than its chart success, it was the way this song influenced generations of musicians that secured its place in rock history. From the earliest heavy metal bands to countless garage rockers, that riff became a rite of passage, a blueprint for how to build a wall of sound. The nostalgia tied to this track is as heavy as the music itself. Picture the scene in 1967, a smoky club bathed in dim light, Cream on stage, and the floor vibrating with every beat of Baker's drums. Or imagine being a teenager hearing it on vinyl for the first time. Volume cranked high enough to rattle the walls. That sound wasn't just entertainment, it was liberation, a new language for a restless generation. Even now, the song's energy hasn't faded. Clapton's guitar solo still sends chills down the spine. Baker's drumming remains a force of nature, and Bruce's voice echoes with raw emotion. Sunshine of Your Love stands as a perfect example of how the 1960s didn't just invent rock anthems, it forged them in fire, ensuring they'd shine for decades to come. Before Jimi Hendrix set Monterey on fire or released Purple Haze, he introduced the world to his genius with Hey Joe. Released in late 1966, this reimagining of a traditional ballad quickly became the launchpad for Hendrix's meteoric rise. While the song had been performed by countless acts before, Hendrix transformed it into something entirely his own. A slow-burning blues rock odyssey with a voice and guitar that demanded the world's attention. Musically, Hey Joe is a showcase of Hendrix's ability to fuse raw emotion with technical mastery. His guitar doesn't just accompany the story, it tells it, bending and stretching notes until they sound like cries of anguish and defiance. Backed by Noel Redding on bass and Mitch Mitchell's crisp, jazz-inflected drumming, the experience created a version that was at once intimate and immense. It wasn't flashy for its own sake. It was powerful storytelling through sound.
Excuse me while I kiss this guy.
The nostalgic resonance of Hey Joe lies in its timing. Imagine being in London in 1966, in a cramped club filled with cigarette smoke and anticipation, when Hendrix, still virtually unknown, stepped onto the stage. The first notes of Hey Joe rang out, and suddenly you knew you were witnessing something historic. Or picture hearing it on an underground FM station in the States, the song cutting through the static late at night, carrying the promise of a new era of rock. The track became Hendrix's first single with The Experience, and a hit in the UK, climbing into the top 10. But its importance wasn't just commercial. Hey Joe marked the arrival of a revolutionary artist, someone who would bend rock into shapes no one had imagined. It was the spark that would lead to the inferno of his late 60s masterpieces. Even today, the song stands as a reminder of rock's capacity to reinvent itself. Hendrix took an old standard and infused it with raw electricity, turning it into a statement of identity. Hey Joe wasn't just a debut, it was a prophecy of what was to come. And for fans who lived through those first moments, it still carries the thrill of discovery, the sound of the future arriving in real time.
Once upon a time, you dressed so fine, through the bumps of dime in your prime.
In 1965, Bob Dylan picked up an electric guitar at the Newport Folk Festival and sent shockwaves through the music world. That same year, he released Like a Rolling Stone, a 6-minute single that shattered every rule of pop radio and redefined what a rock song could be. With its snarling lyrics, organ-driven groove, and raw intensity, Dylan didn't just write a song. He created a revolution.
Then you, people call, say, beware.
The track was confrontational, poetic, and utterly uncompromising. Al Kooper's haunting Hammond organ riff threads through the verses like a ghost, while Dylan spits out lines that cut sharper than any guitar. His voice, ragged and sneering, was a rejection of polish and pretense, a reminder that rock could be both literate and visceral. At a time when most singles clocked in under 3 minutes, Dylan's sprawling 6-minute opus demanded attention, and somehow it became a massive hit.
Oh, you're bound to fall. You thought they were all in you.
Charting at number 2 on the Billboard. Hot 100, Like a Rolling Stone, proved that audiences were ready for something deeper, something rawer. It wasn't about love or teen crushes. It was about alienation, disillusionment, and the cold thrill of freedom. Dylan's words painted vivid scenes of downfall and liberation, and listeners everywhere recognized themselves in the song's restless spirit. The nostalgic memory of this track is tied not just to the song itself, but to its seismic impact. Imagine being a teenager in 1965, hearing this on the radio sandwiched between lightweight pop tunes. Suddenly, Here was Dylan, unleashing a torrent of words, refusing to be background music. It was a moment that made you sit up, turn the volume higher, and realize rock could be more than entertainment. It could be truth. Many recall spinning it on vinyl late at night, lying on their bed as Dylan's verses unfolded like chapters in a novel. Each playthrough revealed new layers of meaning, new turns of phrase that hit differently depending on where you were in life. The song grew with you, reflecting both your frustrations and your hopes. Decades later, Like a Rolling Stone is still hailed as one of the greatest rock songs ever recorded. Its spirit of defiance, its poetic depth, and its unflinching honesty remain as powerful today as they were in 1965. It's not just a song. It's the sound of rock music maturing, stepping boldly into uncharted territory, and never looking back. And there you have it, 10 unforgettable tracks that defined the 1960s and still echo through our memories today. These weren't just songs. They were lifelines, anthems, and the soundtracks to first loves, long drives, and restless nights under the stars. Each one proved that rock could inspire, challenge, and unite a generation. Which of these takes you back the most? Share your stories below, and if you loved this trip down memory lane, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Until next time, keep the vinyl spinning.